Good morning again. Today we're doing topic 1.06, how to do algebra. Now, wait a minute. Haven't you taken like a whole bunch of algebra classes to teach you how to do algebra? Sure, but the algebra you need for chemistry is very specific and actually really easy. You see, what you have to do is all right, are you guys familiar with this? This is the formula for density. Density equals mass over volume. And so you put this stupid triangle here. And if you want density, it's mass over volume. If you want mass, it's density times volume. If you want volume, it's mass over density. You know, it's really cute, isn't it? And if you use it, yeah, don't, because it's not going to help you at 99% of the math. In chemistry, about 50% of the math is simply applying a math equation, like density equals mass over volume, or Q equals MC delta T, or MAVA equals MUBVUB, or P1 V1 over T1 equals P2 V2 over T2. They're very wide and varied and are models for physical behavior. The other half of the math is going to be strictly conversion factors, and that's going to be the next topic, where you want to convert from one unit to another by using some sort of constant. And in order to do all this, you have to understand how the algebra works, and it's very easy. By the way, if you're in my class and I ever catch you using this, I will probably hit you over the head with a wet noodle. But that assumes that I am in possession of a wet noodle at that particular moment. So here's the purpose of algebra. Let's say you have a set of variables. We'll call one of them known, and we need to solve for one of them. We'll call that the target. Algebra is the set of rules that helps you to isolate the variable you're trying to solve for on one side of the equal sign and all the rest of the stuff on the other side of the equal sign. Then what you do is you substitute in the known variables, carry through all the indicated arithmetic, all the multiplication, division, or addition or subtraction, and then you'll solve for your variable because it's on the other side all by itself. But the key is to rearrange the formula before you put in any numbers. We call this rearrange, substitute, and solve. And in my classes, it's the only way I will accept showing your work for algebra. If you just simply plug the numbers into the equation, I'm not even going to look at it. I'm going to ask you to take it back and tell you, let's get those training wheels off your math, because that's what this is. So the first thing you're going to have to do is if there's any addition or subtraction in your formula, you want to undo that first. So if you want to get rid of addition, use subtraction. You subtract the value from both sides. And for subtraction, you add to both sides, because in algebra, whatever you do to one side, you have to do the exact same thing to the other side to keep everything equal. So let's say we want to solve for delta H. Don't worry what these variables mean. We'll be doing that at the end of the year. Now, what's keeping delta H from being by itself? Well, there's T delta S on the same side. And since it's delta H minus T delta S, to get rid of T delta S, all we have to do is add T delta S to both sides. It gets rid of it on the right and puts it on the left. And there you have your new rearranged formula. Then all you have to do to figure out what delta H is plug in the value for delta G, T, and delta S, and bam, you'll have delta H. Okay, multiplication and division. So if you want to have multiplication undone, then just divide both sides by whatever is being multiplied. And so, for example, if we have this equation here, which you'll be doing in the next unit, Q equals MC delta T, what we want to do is isolate M. So we're trying to get M by itself. Now, since M is being multiplied by C delta T, the antidote for multiplication is division. So we divide both sides by C delta T. That gets rid of it on the right side and just leaves it on the left side. And now you just substitute in your values for Q, C, and delta T, and you've got yourself whatever M is. The antidote to division is, well, multiplication. So let's say we have density equals mass over volume. Don't pop out that triangle. All right. So what is keeping m from being by itself? Well, it's being divided by v. So all we have to do is multiply both sides by v. V will go away from the right side and we'll leave it on the left side. So all you have to do is put in your volume and your density, and that will give you your mass when you multiply the two together. Now, sometimes you have to solve for something that's in the denominator. And, well, you just have to remember that when you get all the other stuff over to the other side, if you haven't gotten it out of the denominator, it's still going to be there. Just because the guy moves out of the first floor doesn't mean the guy in the basement isn't still living in the basement. So, what we have to do is once you isolate the denominator, just take the inverse of both sides. For example, let's say we want to solve for volume. Well, right now, volume is, well, it's mass divided by volume. So if you want to get rid of mass, just divide both sides by mass. This will get rid of mass and put it on the other side. But volume is still in the denominator. How do you get it out? Well, you pop a pancake flipper under it and you flip the whole thing. You just take the inverse. All right. So let me run through that one more time. Volume is in the denominator. When you divide both sides by mass to get rid of it, volume is still in the denominator. So you just take the inverse of both sides, you flip both sides, and now you have a properly solved equation. Okay? You don't need that stupid triangle anymore. Okay. Now, there's another way to do it also. Circle the variable you want to solve for. So we want to solve for V2. So we're going to put a circle around it. Now let's nail that to the spot. V2 isn't going to move. We're going to solve for it and make sure all the other stuff is on the other side. Get rid of anything in the numerator by cross-multiplying it over to the denominator of the other side. You'll notice this is exactly the same as if we divided both sides by P2. But instead of just writing P2 down here and P2 down here, just cross-multiply it over. And we can get rid of the denominator by cross-multiplying it up, to the numerator of the other side. This has the effect of multiplying both sides by T2. And if you'll notice, the units for pressure will cancel, the units for temperature will cancel, leaving you with volume equals volume. So this is a nice, quick, easy way to rearrange an equation. Solving for the denominator, same idea. Circle the variable you're trying to solve for, in this case T2 in the denominator. Cross multiply the denominators. Now there are no denominators. Therefore, when you cross multiply P1, V1 down to the other side, T2 is in the numerator and you don't have to flip both sides. Ladies and gentlemen, with algebra, there's more than one way to get to your endpoint. I don't care which way you use to get to your endpoint. When you do your math, I need to see this before you substitute any numbers in. Oh, and by the way, when you do your math, do you ever do this? This times this equals, and then you write down the number. And then you put divided by, and you do this times this, and then you write down the number. And then you do the division. You don't ever have to do that again. Because what you can do is make use of your calculator. If you have a scientific calculator, you'll have parentheses on your calculator. So what you do is parentheses, P2 times V2 times T1, close the parentheses, divided by left parentheses, P1 times V1, close parentheses, equals. You just put it all in your calculator in one go, and when you hit the equal sign, bam, it's done. You don't have to write any of that junk down. And what if you don't have a scientific calculator? It's even easier. P2 times V2 times T1 divided by P1 divided by V1. Divided? Yeah, because they're both in the denominator. And the only way a non-scientific calculator knows that the number's in the denominator is if you hit the divide button. Try it. This times this times this divided by this divided by that. In a scientific calculator, you can put parentheses around this before you multiply. But in a normal cheapo calculator, Multiply out all the numerators and then keep dividing by all the denominators until you're done. Easy peasy. Now, what if we substitute in numbers? First, we rearrange, then we substitute, including the units, and make sure you copy the numbers exactly. This way, you're not losing track of your significant figures when you round. And when you finally get your answer, round it off properly and make sure that you include the unit. So let's say, what is the volume of a rock if it has a density of 5.222 grams per cubic centimeter and a mass of 12.8 grams? So we know the density, we know the mass, we're trying to find the volume. So here's the formula. We know the density, we know the mass, we're trying to solve for the volume. Now the volume is in the denominator, so let's get it the heck out of there. We're going to divide both sides by mass, and then we're going to take the reciprocal of both sides, and then you will have volume equals mass over density. Now all you have to do is just substitute and solve. Grams will cancel out and leave you with cubic centimeters. Now, where do you round? Well, your numerator has 3 significant figures. Your denominator has 4 significant figures. You always round division to the fewest number of sig figs. 1, 2, 3. This next number isn't big enough to round it up, so we just leave it as 2.45 cubic centimeters. That's it. That's all there is. And that's going to be most of the math in the class this year. It doesn't really get any more complicated than that. You do not have to relearn math every time you're faced with a new math formula. And that is how to do algebra. So my recommendation is go forth and do algebra. Have a wonderful day, guys. Bye.